CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes is following the latest from Capitol Hill for us. So, Nancy, what specific answers will Sessions be able to provide during tomorrow's hearing that can actually advance this investigation into Russian meddling?
Well, Anne-Marie, this question of obstruction of justice and whether the president fired James Comey because of his handling of the Russia investigation has now taken on a pretty significant part of this broader Senate intelligence investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. So they want to know from Sessions, what role did you play in James Comey's firing? Did you think that that was appropriate given the fact that you had recused yourself from the Russian investigation? When James Comey came to you and told you that he was uncomfortable about the conversations that he was having one-on-one with the president and he asked you to keep the two of them apart, what did you do? Did you make a promise? Did you follow through with it? And then finally, Anne-Marie, there was that tantalizing moment in the hearing last week where James Comey seemed to suggest that there were things that he couldn't talk about out in the open regarding Jeff Sessions and Russia that contributed to Sessions' decision to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. Now, ostensibly, Comey told the committee more about that when he went on to testify before them behind closed doors. But whatever it was that he was talking about, those senators are certainly going to have questions for Sessions about it as well.
Indeed, and there are a few committees that would really like to talk to Sessions. He is choosing to talk to one in private tomorrow, but there are growing calls for him to speak publicly. What have you heard about that?
Well, we still don't know what form this hearing tomorrow is going to take, which is pretty unusual. Normally, we would know by now whether he was going to be testifying in public or whether he was going to be meeting with the committee behind closed doors. But because this change happened so late, recall it was just over the weekend that he announced that he was not going to be going before an appropriations subcommittee to talk about his department's budget, but instead he was going to be going before the Intelligence Committee. The committee itself may be scrambling at this point to work something out with Sessions. Right now, all signs point to the likelihood that at least part of this conversation will take place behind closed doors, but Democrats are pushing for some of it to take place in public as well. They argue that these are topics that the public has a right to know about as well.
And what about the president? What's the likelihood of him having to tell his story while under oath?
Well, there were a lot of people whose ears perked up at the end of last week when he said publicly that he would be willing to testify under oath. Now, whether that means that he'd be willing to talk under oath to the special counsel at the Department of Justice or to testify under oath here on Capitol Hill, that wasn't clear. But certainly everyone wants to talk to him. And some members of the Senate Intelligence Committee say that that would only be fair because James Comey had the opportunity to tell his entire story last week. And certainly that was a story that was favorable to Comey about his interactions with the president. If the president says that that's not how it happened, then they argue he ought to come before Congress as well and explain his side of the story.
Well, the White House sort of characterized James Comey's testimony as a win for them. And one of the things that sort of piqued their interest was what he had to say about former Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Republicans are now demanding some answers on that. And what he had said was that Lynch had urged him to call his probe into the Clinton email situation a matter as opposed to an investigation. So are we hearing any more about that?
Well, you're hearing a lot about it from Republicans who say, look here, Jeff Sessions is not the first attorney general to inject politics into an investigation. After all, Loretta Lynch urged Comey to call it a matter, not an investigation, and Comey said he felt uncomfortable about that. Even Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat this weekend, said that made her queasy when she heard about it as well. But the reality is, Anne-Marie, that Loretta Lynch is no longer Attorney General. A, she left when President Obama left office, and B, the investigation that she asked to call a matter has been closed. The FBI determined that there was no reason to recommend charges against Hillary Clinton. So while it makes for a great Republican talking point, you really can't put it in the same realm as an ongoing Russia investigation that is really hanging over this entire administration right now.
Right, not just one investigation, but several. Nancy Cordes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.